Trying to gauge what we should expect from the Mavs here over these final 32 games plus playoffs. What do you think of their new look?
I think they'll score a lot of points. I think they'll give up a lot of points, and I think they'll probably not go as far as they hope to because of the latter part. I just think, for as good as Luka and Kyrie can be offensively, they give a lot of it back at the other end, and I just wonder, with the depth that Dallas lost and the lack of perimeter athleticism they have, I don't remember who, but somebody recently compared them to me to what the Jazz were last year without Rudy Gobert behind them, right? And I think that's sort of what Dallas has, and it's going to be a real challenge for Jason Kidd and Sean Sweeney and their coaching staff to come up with enough ways to have this team defend enough to win as much as they need to. But if they can find a way to get some stops, those two guys can score as much as anybody, and they're going to be very hard for teams to stop. So, in a Western Conference with a lot of flawed teams and a lot of, it's as wide open as I've ever seen a conference in the league, if you're being a Dallas optimist, you say, look, these guys could score with anybody, and teams like Denver and Phoenix and some of these other teams are not exactly defensive juggernauts either. So, if you've got an offense that's that potent, it might be enough to carry you forward anyway.
Tim, I know you've been writing quite a bit about the future of Kyrie. What needs to go right here down the stretch for Kyrie and the Mavericks to have a long-term partnership past just this final stretch run?
I have no idea, honestly. And I'm not trying to be flippant about your question, but I think if Kyrie has proven anything, it's that it's foolish to try to predict what he's going to do, right? So, I think obviously it would help if the Mavs have a deep playoff run, I would think, and he gets along with Luka and they play great. But I learned a long time ago to stop guessing how things are going to play out with Kyrie Irving. So I would say everybody just enjoy the next few months and see how it goes, and then we'll see what happens in the summertime, because that's probably the most truthful way I could answer the question. And I just don't think there's going to be a lot of clarity on what he's going to want to do.
Tim, do you ever worry that you're never going to get back the time that you have to work with Tim McMahon on the air every day?
I don't worry about it because I know it's true. So that's my answer on that.
Well, we're big fans of Tim, obviously, and
I'm big fan. I'm a big fan of Tim too. To be clear, he's great.
It has been so tough watching these Mavs try to defend all year long, and then they get worse losing Dorian and adding Kyrie. Could it work? With Kyrie and Luka playing such a prominent role, how much of a handicap is that when you're trying to team build and make a good enough defense to win a championship?
It's hard. Look, it's hard, guys, right? And, Tim has talked a bunch in the last couple of months, or last couple of weeks, I should say, about Maxi Kleber coming back from this hamstring surgery, right? Well, they kind of need to clone Maxi Kleber. Like, if you had a couple or three of him with those guys, then, it'd probably like their chances better. Or if they could have if he could, reoperate Dorian Finney-Smith back on the team, that would help. But there's just not a lot of guys who do a lot of guarding on the Mavs, and it's going to be a challenge. There's just no question about it. It's going to be very hard. But again, if you are looking at it optimistically, you look around the West, and all these teams are flawed. I'm in Philly tonight to see them play Memphis. Memphis can't score. Denver is not, Denver has an okay defensive team. I don't trust them to guard at the highest level. If Nikola Jokic is in pick and rolls with Luka and Kyrie, it's probably not going to go great, right? Phoenix certainly has high-end talent with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Chris Paul. I don't know if they can really guard a team with Luka and Kyrie on it. Who's guarding either one of those guys? Don't have a great answer, right?
Yeah.
If you go down the list, all these teams are flawed. And so Dallas has a clear flaw. They also have a clear strength. And these West playoffs are going to be truly fascinating to me because there's just a lot of flawed, complicated teams going head to head, and it very well may just come down to what matchups you draw and how your team matches up with the other one. Because if you told me 6 different teams could win the West, I wouldn't argue with you. I don't feel great about any of these teams picking them to win the West. And frankly, I think the 3 best teams in the whole league are the 3 best teams in the East. But none of them play in the West, and so it's going to make for a pretty incredible playoffs that I just hope everybody's healthy for, because I'm really, really fired up to watch them.
Yeah, you're enjoying the NBA insights of Tim Bontemps, ESPN. I've been thinking the best bet to have a really good team emerge from the East is the Golden State Warriors getting healthy and getting on the same page, kind of like they did last year.
Yep, I agree. I think we actually were just talking about this, McMahon, Brian Winters, and I on the Hoop Collective earlier today. It's coming out tomorrow. If I have to pick one team to win 3 series in the West, I'm still picking Golden State, despite the fact that they've been 500 all year, despite the fact that Steph has been hurt, despite the fact that they're like 4 billion on the road, or whatever their record is. I mean, they've been a horrible road team, right? But at the end of the day, if they're healthy on April 10th and they're in the tournament, do you guys feel like you could pick anybody to beat them 4 times in the West? I don't. I don't like anybody's chances to beat them 4 times because I haven't seen anybody do it. And I'm not confident that, Memphis or Denver or the Clippers or the Suns or the Mavs or any of these teams can beat Golden State if they're healthy 4 out of 7 times. I mean, look, for all the flaws that the Warriors have had this year, when their main starting 5 of Steph, Clay, Draymond, Andrew Wiggins, and Kevon Looney's on the court, they're outscoring teams by 22 points or 21 points per 100 possessions. It's by far the best lineup in the league. It's like not even close. Any lineup that's played over 100 minutes this season, they've got by far the best net rating. So when their guys are healthy and they're playing, they can play with anybody. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think if you're picking a team to win the West, despite everything that's gone on, I'm riding with Golden State till somebody beats them 4 times.
Tim, what do you make of Sacramento? I know before the break, the Mavs went in there and had a back-to-back. Is that a team that's just kind of just hanging in there, or is that a legitimate team in the West?
I don't think it's a legitimate team, but, I mean, again, I don't know, right? Like, the way they've had a really good offense this year. Mike Brown's a really good coach. They play really hard. De'Aaron Fox has been an incredible clutch player. I mean, you mentioned those games. I watched, I want to say it was the second game. I think it was the one. Yeah, it was the one. It was the first game Luka. Well, I guess Luka might have played in both games. The game Luka played in Sacramento, they ended up losing late when Luka missed that 3. And the final couple minutes of regulation and overtime were incredible. I mean, Sacramento's had a ton of awesome games this year. Now, look, if you tell me the Kings finish 7th or 8th, they fall off these next few weeks and then they lose in the play-in, like, I wouldn't be stunned by that. But they've been pretty consistently in the top 4 for 3 months now. So they're probably going to get in. And I'm honestly, like, whatever they do in the playoffs, I just hope they get in because that has long been one of the best fan bases in the league. They've had literally nothing to cheer for well over a decade. And they're super fun to watch. They play hard. De'Aaron's been great. Domantas Sabonis has been great for them. I'm just happy that fan base is finally getting some success. I don't think they're going to make a playoff run, but for a team that hasn't made the playoffs since the mid-2000s, I think they'll be very happy to just get it.
What was your reaction to the Suns landing KD?
I mean, I was headed to Bristol from Boston for a game that Wednesday night. I saw Celtics Sixers and was in the car, so I was surprised when it happened, like everybody else. But they're sort of a little bit better version of Dallas to me. I understand everybody automatically slotted them as favorites because they've got Chris Paul and Devin Booker and KD and DeAndre Ayton, but there's not a lot of depth outside of them. I don't trust their defense to hold up. And honestly, the other biggest thing, as you guys know, I don't trust them to be healthy. Like Chris Paul has had a lot of muscle injuries. Devin Booker's had now a lot of muscle injuries. Kevin Durant is still out from this MCL sprain that he's got, right? Like, if you tell me those 4 guys are going to be healthy from now until the end of June, yeah, they could win the West. But, I mean, if you're putting odds on it, I mean, I hope this isn't the case, but odds are they're probably not all going to be healthy. And if they're not all healthy, combined with their lack of depth to begin with, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to make it through the crucible of a 2-month playoff run with such a top-end roster with obvious health concerns across it.
Tim, what do you make of what's going on with the Clippers right now and with Westbrook and that situation? There seems to be people are like, immediately like, well, they just made themselves worse. Are we being overly dramatic on that one?
I think it depends on how much Russ plays, right? If he has a targeted role where he comes in for 15 minutes or tops 20 minutes a game, and he's giving them some punch on the second unit, and they have him out there with these floor space lineups with a bunch of wings, like he was playing in Houston, right? And you could space the floor and have him attack. I think then he could be useful. If he's playing 35 minutes a game and opening and closing games and playing down the stretch in playoff games and out there in crunch time, yeah, I do think they got worse. So, I'm not trying to give a cop-out answer, but I do think it does depend on just how much he's used. I think if it's as a 6th, 7th, 8th guy who, is used strategically, I think you could give them a little bit of punch. If it's, hey, Russ is going to be a starter, Russ is going to play 32 minutes a game, Russ is going to be in our closing lineup, I think the Clippers, who, might be the team I'd pick to have the best chance to beat Golden State with the way they're playing and the way Kawhi's played of late in particular, I do think it would make them easier to guard if Russ is out there in those scenarios.
Tim Bontemps, ESPN. Okay, Sunday's showcase there, Mavs-Lakers 2:30. Speaking of Russ, is it possible that it like unleashes some pent-up quality basketball with getting rid of him? They looked good shortly before the All-Star break. What do you think the Lakers do here down the stretch?
Well, I mean, what helped the Lakers was getting a couple of credible NBA players in the rotation, right? I mean, that's been their biggest problem. They just haven't had enough good players. So certainly, losing Patrick Beverley, losing Westbrook, Westbrook was more helpful this year at times than Beverley, but replacing them with Malik Beasley, a good volume shooter, replacing them with Jared Vanderbilt, a very solid, dependable big. Those things help. People keep thinking the Lakers are now definitely going to make the playoffs and stuff. They might make the play-in, but the thing you got to remember, guys, is they're 3 games out, I believe, in the loss column behind Oklahoma City in 10th, and they've got to jump 3 teams just to get into the play-in tournament, right? So, this isn't just, the Lakers are in a play-in spot, and can they get up to 6th? It's going to be a real challenge for these guys to get to 10th. And they probably got to go 15-8 or something like that to get up that high. And they've been a below 500 team all season. So I think that if LeBron and AD are healthy for the final 6 weeks, I like their chances of finding a way to get to 10th because some of these teams are going to be dropping back. Utah's probably going to lose some games. Portland's not very good. We'll see if there's injuries. Some of these other teams fall. We'll see what happens in New Orleans, right? Who knows when Zion Williamson is going to be able to play. They've had a ton of injuries. They've fallen off a cliff. So they can maybe get in. And if they are, say, the 7 or 8 seed going into the first round, for all the flaws they have, I wouldn't want to see LeBron and AD in a playoff series if they're out there.
No.
So certainly they're going to be a challenging team to knock out if they get in. But I think the assumption from people that, they made these trades and they got rid of Russ, and now they're just going to go on a roll and make the playoffs. I think it's a lot easier said than done because they got to climb out of a pretty significant hole just to give themselves a chance to win 2 games and get in.